And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointed episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers dropped their fourth straight game. This one, a 74-69 loss to the visiting Wisconsin Badgers. The loss drops Indiana to 16-9 overall on the season, 7-8 in Big Ten play, and a season that was once very promising, as recently as just a few weeks ago, is now decidedly on the brink, if not teetering over the brink, as another February swoon appears to be upon this program. It was a game coming in that, we all thought was so important for Indiana to win, to arrest this slide and to get some positive momentum going, get another big win for the resume, and just kind of get the season back on track. And now the Hoosiers are really going to be behind the eight ball. It obviously doesn't mean that the season is over. There are plenty of games left, plenty of opportunities to get big wins, but it becomes harder and harder to foresee the team actually doing it as, they continue to either get blown out and lose their composure, or just in a close opportunity like this with a win there to be had, just unable to execute down the stretch. And we know from game after game after game after game against Wisconsin, you have to out execute them late. They're not going to beat themselves. And tonight, Indiana beat itself. This is a game Indiana led 66-61 at the 3:52 mark, and they end up losing by 5 as Wisconsin outscores them down the stretch by 10. We're going to talk about it all here on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm your host, Jared Morris. I'm here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and Andy Bottoms. And let's start the show the way that we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And, the banner moment tonight, I'm going back to that moment. 3:52 to go. Trayce Jackson-Davis steps up, hits one free throw, puts Indiana up 5 with 3 minutes and 52 seconds to go at home in a must-win game. You have to find a way to close that game out, and Indiana doesn't do it. But we're going to spend plenty of time talking about that. This is the banner moment, and this is the time to praise Trayce Jackson-Davis for what was an outstanding performance. Trayce has not been good during this losing streak. He had 3 really rough games in a row against Illinois, against Northwestern, and against Michigan State. But tonight, Trayce Jackson-Davis did absolutely everything he could do to try and get his team a victory when they desperately needed one. Trayce finished with 30 points. He was 10 of 13 from the field. He was 10 of 14 from the free throw line. He had 8 rebounds. He had a career-high 6 assists. He had blocked shots. And it was a really interesting tale of two halves for Trayce. Early in the game, he was on the move. He was being used a lot as a screener, and he was getting baskets in a lot of different ways. In the second half, he was much more kind of playing his traditional back to the basket post-up role, and he succeeded in both. He had the kind of energy and offensive awareness and focus that we just haven't seen from him in the last few games. And he was terrific tonight, and so Indiana lost for a lot of reasons, which we are going to get into. Trayce was not one of them. He was absolutely awesome. And in fact, what I think what we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about today is some of the missed opportunities, time in the first half and time in the second half when both Race and Trayce were off the court, where Wisconsin made little runs each time. And this team is not good enough offensively, not consistent enough to just have 2 or 3 minutes where you don't have an anchor offensively out there. Would that have made the difference in a 5-point loss? I don't know. But, I sure know with the way that those two guys played, it would have been nice to have one of them on the court at all times. And especially tonight, Trayce Jackson-Davis, again, for all of the struggles that he has had recently and a lot of the criticism that he has gotten, in a game like this, your star has to show up. And Trayce did show up. The problem is other guys have to show up too, and not enough did. And down the stretch, Trayce wasn't able to get enough support from his point guards and from the offense, and just the ability of the offense to create good shots in tough situations to bring home the victory. But it wasn't for lack of effort. It wasn't for lack of focus. It wasn't for lack of skill and shot making from Trayce. He was terrific tonight, one of his best games of the season. Unfortunately, it came in a loss for Indiana. Our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel, now in their 5th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their first as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. We love our friends at Homefield Apparel, and as I'm sure you know by now, they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find everywhere. They have beloved logos, like 2 different versions of the Bison, and so many others. That's what they do. They go and pull these old logos, old brand marks that colleges and universities haven't used for decades, and they bring them back. They breathe new life into them. and just make really, really cool gear. And it's not just Indiana. If you support other college teams or have people in your life who do, Homefield probably has something for them as well. Their product line now extends to more than 120 different schools with unique vintage logos for all of them. I think they're releasing Illinois this week, and so always new schools coming out. And no matter what you buy, it will be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. Plus, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through Kelly. And what could be better than that? So go to homefieldapparel.com, use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Again, the website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, well, it is time to find the ball, move the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Andy, we will go to you for your bottoms line first on this disappointing Indiana defeat.
Was it telling that you just said find the ball, move the open man instead of move the ball, find the open man? I feel like that was apropos of, the way things went tonight.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments, and I'm sure we'll get to them, that were real turning points in the game. But despite missed opportunities earlier, IU, Parker Stewart hits that three. IU's up 65-61. And IU would score 4 points in the last 10 possessions of the game. And the only field goal they made in that stretch was it was a great hustle play by X to get the putback on what was a terrible 3-point attempt from Trey. And then 2 different times when TJD split free throw attempts. And at the same time, Wisconsin comes down. They score in 7 of their last 8 possessions. They scored 13 points on their last 8 possessions. I mean, you put yourself in position to win the game, and all of the flaws of this team offensively kind of came home to roost in that stretch. And you had guys with tired legs settling for jump shots. It's not a great combination. And I thought they really, they had a lot of success where they were running those cross screens for Trayce and trying to get him the ball on the block. And then it didn't work one time. And then it seemed like they totally went away from it. He got pushed out a little bit and missed a hook shot. And then they never really went back to it. But I mean, he was getting fouled, or at least they were getting good looks in those scenarios. And it was, I just felt like they gave up on that too quickly. It definitely felt like the, run it till they stop you. And even though they stopped you once, he didn't get a terrible shot. They just pushed him out a little bit further. He had a, left-handed hook. And then, the taking the, if you look who took the shots, X misses a jumper, Galloway misses a three, X misses a jumper, Galloway misses a three, X misses a three, Stewart misses a three on that possession out of the timeout, and then David Johnson missed another three. I mean, and by the end, you needed 3-pointers, but I just thought they really let the game get away from them in that stretch. And again, I think there were plenty of times, and we can point back to, there was Race Thompson took a three early in the shot clock, and Wisconsin comes down and nails one. There's lots of those little plays where there were opportunities for IU to extend leads or do things like that. But for as poorly as they had played at times, they had seemed to have weathered the storm, put themselves in a position to pick up what would have been a really big win for a tournament resume at home. Calls didn't go with them, all that stuff, but just the same level of late game execution that we've seen no matter who the coach was over the last few years. And hard to see this team getting up off the mat after this one, I would say.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
It's just bad basketball at key moments, and it starts with the head coach, and what he's trying to instill in his program isn't working. It's simple as that. And then the players, what they're being asked to do, it's simply not working. And we will have one player play well one game and someone else go 3 for 16, and then that person will shoot well the next game and doesn't. The word consistency has been used all season, and when you're 16-9, 25 games in, and the same problems are there, then there's a lot of things that are going wrong in the basketball program right now. So that, and when you play good competition, you can't have a first half end on a 7-2 run. I think it was 29-25 and ended up 32-31. And in the last 3.5 minutes, you're up 5 and you end up losing that. So that comes down to player execution late, and it comes down to coach putting them in the right positions late. And it's not good enough to come close with this team and this expectation when you can pick transfers and do things, and the expectations were really, really high. There's just it's just not good right now. And I know players are trying, I know coaches are trying, but it's bad basketball. At key moments tonight, I thought there were some movement, there was some more sets run, more attempts to do some things right, but it was just bad execution all the way around. So to me, that starts at the top.
All right, and making a special appearance for a late night rant by popular demand, it is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, lots to rant about.
Yeah, and Indiana's last made basket came with 5 minutes left. It was that Parker Stewart 3, and that was it from the offense. And quite frankly, I mean, you can talk about Indiana doesn't have the players that it needs to run this offense or whatever, but you can run sets to get baskets. You can, especially when you're as experienced as Mike Woodson and the rest of the staff is. You can find ways to get baskets. And they just didn't find ways to get baskets. And this collapse the last 5 minutes, we've seen it repeatedly this year. This is not a one-game thing. And quite frankly, and Jared and I, we've talked about this privately, that, if Rob Finney doesn't make that shot against Purdue, we're talking about how they collapsed late against Purdue. They were up a decent chunk. Purdue came all the way back and took the lead. If Rob Finney doesn't hit what was frankly a low percentage shot to win that game, what does this team have to hang its hat on this year? I mean, a home win against Ohio State? Really? And you're looking now at a situation where this team was in a really good position, led at the half against Illinois, and has now lost 4 games in a row and is tanking these games. Is either not competing or playing late and falling apart in these games. And this has happened all season long. This team cannot play a full 40 minutes. And I'm sorry, to be in the middle of February and have not figured out how to get this team to play 40 minutes. I don't care if they're not your players. I don't care if they're not, if you don't have exactly what you need, you should at least be getting a similar effort for 40 minutes. And I don't mean effort like trying. I mean effort like being able to run things and produce points and doing things. These games are so uneven that you can be running things great for 5 minutes and then completely fall apart for the next 10. That is not like this. Just with the amount of experience that Mike Woodson has, you'd figure he would at least have an answer. And the other thing that drives me nuts about this game, what Johnny Davis does. You know what he does. And you know what Parker Stewart and Miller Kopp cannot do. And yet you pair them up together. You put their best player on your worst defenders. Like, what are you thinking? How are you going to stop Wisconsin if you cannot stop their best player? And he just repeatedly beat them off the dribble all night long. When it came down to the clutch and they needed to get a basket, what'd they do? Drove him. He got continuation. That was garbage. Absolute garbage. But you knew exactly what they were going to do. Johnny Davis was going to get it and just go beat him off the dribble. We were screaming it in this living room. Like, I just don't understand what the thinking is. I don't understand the logic. I don't understand what Indiana is trying to do. And I don't understand how this team cannot adjust one bit. It's the same story every time they lose. They come out, they play a really good stretch of basketball, give you hope, and then collapse at the end and look absolutely terrible because they have nowhere to go with the ball, because defenses are going to play down on Trayce Jackson-Davis. And to not have a counter for that, and for your last 4 shots to be 3-pointers by Xavier Johnson, who was 3 of 16 tonight, Trey Galloway, who should almost never be shooting a 3-pointer, and Parker Stewart throwing something up that hit the side of the backboard. And then again, Xavier Johnson leaning in and trying to fire something up at the end. Like, those are the final 4 shots you're going to take in a game you have to win to reestablish yourself in the Big Ten. That is a problem. Not only, I know people in the Indiana fan base love to blame the players and blame the lack of talent and everything. Trust me, I hear about it all the time. And that there is some of that where, like, you don't have the guys to hit open shots and all of that. And I get that. But if those are your last 4 shots, I'm not blaming the players. I'm blaming the guys who put them in the position to know that you cannot take those, to not know that you cannot take those shots in those situations. I don't care how open Trey Galloway is. Your shot, when you have a chance to tie the game, should not be a Trey Galloway 3. And Xavier Johnson's 3 of 16 and 1 of 6 from 3. He should not be shooting that 3-pointer. You had plenty of time. Work it around and find a better shot. By the way, when Galloway shot that 3, Miller Kopp was standing in the corner wide open. and he did not make the extra pass. That is not disciplined offense late in the game, and that's why you got beat. And it's why you got beat on your home floor by a guy like Brad Davison, who everybody hates. You let him go to his locker room and celebrate because you did not play smart late. Think about that and enjoy that thought.
Enjoy that thought? I don't think so. I mean, well said. Everything you said there is spot on. This, to me, coach, this loss is on the coaches. I thought the guys played their butts off today. I really did. I thought they played hard. And I think, early in the season, as we watch some of these things play out, it was reasonable to give some patience because you thought it would get better, and it's getting worse. And it's a big concern, even with all the caveats, for, all the normal stuff for a coach in his first season. This should look better than it does right now with experienced guys. It should. And Xavier Johnson did not play well tonight. He is not. It's not a coincidence that he, had, a really good game at Maryland. Indiana played well, and he has not played well in 4 straight games. And I want to be somewhat careful, talking about Xavier. His grandpa just passed away. We don't know what he's going through. And I think those things, fans should take that stuff into account. But just assessing his play, he hasn't been good. He didn't shoot well tonight. At times when he got in the lane, he was kind of in between. Should I shoot it? Should I pass it? And the indecision just led to kind of nothingness. But ultimately tonight, the coaches just didn't put these guys in positions to make plays. I thought they did in the first half at times, but some of the lineup decisions, playing lineups with groups that just don't have an offensive rudder. I mean, you're just giving minutes away. And then, at the end, some of the shots they got. So I really look at this as a game where the players gave you what you needed. They played with desperation. They played with toughness. There were a couple moments where, Parker got a little frustrated, but he came right back and then made a 3. The guys brought the fight tonight. The coaches didn't put him in a position to capitalize on it, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, I get a lot of criticism for being too pro-coach, but I've lost some faith in what's going on in the Indiana program because it's the same things. And part of what I'm trying to realize is he's running his philosophy, which is heavy point guard and heavy post-up. And he said it after the Michigan State game, he believes in stationary shooters on the outside. That's what Mike Woodson believes in. And that's what we have to get used to watching. And then you need the players in order to do that. And maybe with recruiting and that, there's a chance that it'll get better. But I think we all need to realize that we're going to see a lot of post-ups as long as you have a TJD, and you're going to see a point guard-centric offense because that's what he ran in the NBA and that's what he feels comfortable with. And I think he believes it can work in college. And right now it's not. So I would agree with you, Jared, that a little bit of stubbornness that we coaches have is coming through in trying to get his system in. I don't think it fits these guys. I think that's a little bit of a disservice because you have the team who you have right now, and you have to have some sets and some ability to do different things. And I actually thought they ran more stuff tonight, to be honest. I really did. To be fair, they ran more stuff, and that's when the players, missing shots. But how many times do we see the point guard getting shots? So we just have to hope that X has a good game. If X is not having a good game, we're probably going to lose against good talent. And that's just the philosophy that he has right now. And I think he's going to stick with. And we're going to see that at Ohio State. And whether we like it or not, that's just when you hire a coach, they're going to do what they want. And we, can't forget that he's really improved the defense. But, I said after the Northwestern game and the suspensions that this was a little bit deeper. And I think there's, without me knowing what's going on in there, that there's some issues going on with the Indiana basketball that I wonder what's going on. And because they're just not playing complete basketball, and it's just not fun to watch. It's just not good. And yet, the team is close in some of these games, so I kind of bounce back and forth, a little bit, but it's not good. It's not good when you lose 4 in a row. It's not and really it's not the results. To me, it's how they're getting the results and the subs and some of those things that need to be fair for criticism.
Yeah.
Ryan, real quick.
Yeah, I was going to say, if this was a bunch of freshmen, you'd understand the collapses late. You'd understand not knowing how to win. You'd understand not, maybe following exactly what the coach wants to do or whatever. There's a lot of veterans on this team. There's guys who have been leaders other places. There's guys who have been leaders here, and they're not executing late. I mean, that's what's the disaster to me. I mean, if this were Tamar Bates and Logan Duncombe and Christian Lander out there late, you think, okay, they're going to screw up. They got to go through these growing pains. But you got veterans who don't know how to play late. And this far into the season, you haven't taught them how to play late, how to finish games, how to finish strong, how to, when you have a 6-point lead, how to put your foot on the other team's neck and go and get that extra bucket that you need to make it go from, I guess it was 5 to 7 or 5 to 8. They don't have that. And we saw that for 4 years under Archie Miller. They couldn't do that. And they cannot do it this year either. And there's been no change there. And there's been no gradual change where it's getting a little bit better here. We're just waiting to get over the hump. It's been the same all season. And, I just, Coach, you're right about his talk about stationary shooters and heavy point guard play and all of that stuff. It's true, and it's all an NBA philosophy. And we've seen a lot of guys come from the NBA to college and be wildly unsuccessful. And you've seen it go the other way too. College guys go to the NBA, wildly unsuccessful, because the things don't translate. And if you're Mike Woodson, you're walking back to Indiana and you care about turning Indiana around. And I believe he does. I absolutely believe that this is very important to him. You got to humble yourself and realize what I did there is not going to work here. I'm going to surround myself with people who are going to make this, who are going to teach me what I need to know, because my entire career has been there. I need to know how to do things here and make it work. Mike Woodson, good motivator, supposedly a really good leader of men, good in the room with recruits, all of that. You got to show me you know how to coach the team on the floor, though, because none of that other stuff matters. Mike Davis was a great dude who was great in a room with people and got his players motivated. Tom Crean, off the court, a lot of his players swear by him. There is a laundry list of great dudes who have come to college basketball and not been successful as head coaches. I'm not saying that's going to be Mike Woodson. But you got to start showing me something at the end of your first season that you know what you're doing and you know that this is not the NBA and that you do not have NBA talent. You don't got Carmelo Anthony sitting out there at the end of the game to make plays for you. You got a bunch of college kids who you're going to need to figure out a way to get them to score points in the last 5 minutes. And it's been really rough so far.
You need to lead them.
Yeah.
You need to lead college kids. The trust
They're not
factor
going to
is
motivate
great
themselves.
and confidence, but it started with Race's shot up 7. The freedom to shoot that 3 on the break. There's time and score too. That should have been a drive and get fouled, and you go up 9. That might have been some separation. And I love Race, but that was a bad decision. But that to me is a cultural thing that go shoot and we'll. I just think that this that we need to be better. This team is not devoid of talent. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's top 20 team talent. But boy, the way games have been lost, that last stretch was just painful to watch.
Andy, do you have an update on the Tyra Buss, Brad Davison relationship? I feel like the show is really missing that.
Well, we haven't heard anything about them for a good 15 minutes now, so I am concerned that we don't know exactly
Tyra, we're done.
What the bridesmaid dresses will be or anything of that nature. It's unclear at this point. We'll get somebody on it.
You want the last word on this really uplifting first segment here?
I mean, it's tough to know what to talk about. I think the difficult part is, and I see people in the chat and people on Twitter like, why is Miller cop guarding Johnny Davis? Well, I'd love for somebody to tell me who did a better job on him, because I thought Cop defended him pretty well at the beginning of the second half. Stewart got absolutely roasted by him regularly.
By everybody.
And Galloway struggled with him as well. So it's like we can say this is, I'm not defending the coaching, because I thought the coaching on the offensive standpoint, and I'll get to that in a second, was poor. But we asked some of these questions, and it's like it becomes so easy to lash out and take shots at some of the players of like, well, he shouldn't be guarding him in this scenario. He shouldn't be doing whatever. I thought Cop on a couple occasions kept Davis from getting baskets in the first half. There was a sideline out of bounds play where Davis took the ball in. Their play was to get it back to him to cut, and Cop cut him off. There was another play in transition when he forced him to turn the ball over. Like, he did as well as anybody on him. And I'm not even saying he did a great job. But I thought they were late to take Stewart off of him, because he was just getting, put in a blender over the course of time when he's doing
Like when he
that.
guarded Ivy earlier in the year. It just makes
Yeah.
no sense.
Yeah. I mean, so then we want to talk about like Xavier Johnson shouldn't be taking these shots. Like he took some bad shots. I'm not saying that he didn't, but the offense is designed in such a way that if something isn't going to Trayce, there's no movement. So he ends up with a ball in his hands and gets hung out to dry. Again, there are times he took quick shots, but not all 16 of those shots were quick. Sometimes it was a guy trying to bail out an offense that wasn't doing anything. So people can get pissed at him and say, this guy's not playing well. And I agree with you that, he deserves some grace from, his, given his situation with his grandfather and just with how hard he's played over the course of the year. Unfortunately, it's, both Wisconsin games that really stick out in terms of some of the shooting. And they were clearly willing to live and die with, if this guy's going to make shots and we lose, then so be it. But they were, trying not to do that. So, I struggle a little bit. The common thread in some of that is how can the coaches put these guys in better chances to succeed? And I said that a few games ago. They're not elevating the talent. They're not getting the most out of what these guys, they're not doing anything collectively to make them greater than what they seem like they are. And so we end up on here, we put guys in, we got the 5-man bench group out there again. Now that group looks a little bit different because now Parker Stewart's on it, but that group, even for a few minutes, was not good. And then, but you don't use the bench, and you basically played 6 guys in the second half, and Race Thompson looked like he could hardly run down the court by the end of the game. So what do you want? What do you want him to do? What do you want some of these guys to do? And that's to me what points it back in that space. Yeah, players could have made different decisions in the game, and I singled out the Race Thompson 3-point shot. That's not a good shot. That's a shot you'd expect a guy who's been around as long as he has to, to maybe pass up and try to get a better shot. But man, it's just hard to watch the team seem to be, and somebody put this in the chat, that the team is, instead of being greater than the sum of its parts, it's less than the sum of its parts. And it's hard. It's hard not to watch this team and see that. And then down the stretch where guys are, I think, trying to make, somebody's just dying to make a play. And I think that leads to some of those bad shots. And again, that's a mentality thing. And, we can sit here and say some of those shots didn't be taken, but there's got to be a way to get better shots than that. Woodson even said on Fisher's thing after the last play call was awful that the guys froze. And it was like, yeah, when there was nothing open immediately, it was like, holy crap, what do we do now? And then it just ends with Parker Stewart like hurling a shot at the basket. I don't know. And that's becoming the theme for me. The same struggles. They are now next to last in the Big Ten in offensive efficiency in conference games. Penn State surpassed them tonight. You got the second best defensive efficiency in conference play and the second worst offense. And there is not so little talent on this team that the offense can at least be middle of the road in the Big Ten.
And yet even that defense, when you really needed to get stops late, you couldn't get them. And that's, so on a night like tonight, you're up 5 down the stretch. You got to have something working. And at winning time, nothing was working. Yeah,
and they just couldn't get stops. And to Wisconsin's credit, they were going to go with Johnny Davis until IU figured out a way to stop him, and they never really could. I don't have the answer for who IU could have put on him, because
you might just have to double him on the catch and make someone else beat you, but do something.
Yeah,
you got to do something, because I agree. I don't think Indiana has one guy that can guard him. Miller Kopp fought his butt off and probably did about as well as anybody. But I don't think at the end of the day, you can just throw your hands up and be like, well, we just don't have an answer for him. The guy scored 30 points. Make someone else beat you somehow. I don't know. There were just a lot of decisions tonight that, to me, just didn't put these guys in a position to win, that their effort and their focus demanded. I thought the guys were focused. I just think at times they didn't know what to do because they're not sure what to do or what the plan is. So anyway, let's get out of this segment because it's a late show and there's still a lot to talk about. And I'm not sure if the music is working. So everything's just going great tonight. Coming up here as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's loss to Wisconsin, I'm going to point out tonight's meaningful moments that you might have missed. We'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. And we'll talk about other stuff. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. Did you hear that? No. Okay, good.
No. You can just hum silently.
That kind of night, Jared.
You can just hum something as we come in from the break. It'll be fine.
We got no offense. We got no music. Our pets
got
heads
no
are
Heads
falling
audio.
off. All right. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris, here with Andy Bottoms, the coach Brian Tonsoni. And it was a loss so frustrating that Ryan even popped on a night when he wasn't going to. We appreciate that. So time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. And guys, for the meaningful moment, actually, I want to go back to the first half. Coming out of the under 8-minute timeout, Trey Galloway, made a huge splash. Now, Trey Galloway struggled in the second half. I think you can question, some of the shots, obviously, that he took, that kind of stuff. But I thought in the first half, he made a big impact and had basically a 6-0 run of just Trey Galloway things. Trayce Jackson-Davis got the ball in the high post. Trey made a cut that was very reminiscent of Will Sheehy from the corner to the basket for the dunk. Then, Trey perfectly, read a pass, got the steal for the breakaway dunk. And then in a half-court possession, the next time down, he drives into the lane, spins, finds a cutting Trayce Jackson-Davis for a dunk. It was a 6-0 run. It put Indiana up 26-19. There was one play in between there, which was a good look for Parker Stewart from three, that if he makes it, it's 29-19, and Indiana's really rolling. And it was one of the best stretches for Indiana, and I think it was a reminder of what Trey can do, why there is a chance that some of those losses Indiana had earlier in the season, one or two of those might have been wins if Trey Galloway hadn't gotten hurt. Although the way that the game ended, he obviously wasn't able to make a big enough dent late. But, what that stretch really reminds me of when you think about Indiana getting up 7 there late in the first half is, Wisconsin didn't play very well in the first half. Again, I thought in a lot of ways Indiana outplayed Wisconsin for large stretches of that game. But, they had this stretch in the middle of the second or of the first half, Andy, where they played the all bench lineup. The offense did nothing. I think Wisconsin went on like a 4 or 5 point run. And then Indiana had a lead, late in the first half, and they put in Stewart and Kopp together, a lineup that over and over again just has not worked. And Wisconsin went on a run to get the lead at the half. And it really felt like Indiana should have been up six or 7 points, and they were down by 1. And, again, when you're playing Wisconsin, the margins matter because they're going to execute well. Indiana obviously is not a team that is executing well. And so the margins matter. And so all those minutes that you're playing with lineups that 20-some games into the season, we have seen them not work. You're giving minutes away, And so, Indiana goes on this great run. They're up 7, but then they're down 1 at the end of the first half in what really felt like preventable ways, just because of, kind of suboptimal lineup decisions and some other things that they did. Again, is that going to make the difference in a 5-point game? Well, I keep asking that question. All that stuff adds up to losing by 5 to Wisconsin. And this is why Wisconsin always beats us, because they have an identity, they execute, and we don't. It's been the biggest difference between the two programs for 20 years. That's why they kick our ass. So, and that happened in the first half, and you can forget about it because of the execution down the stretch, but maybe Indiana's up 10 or 11 points instead of 5, at the under 4-minute timeout, if you've done the other stuff up to that point better. So,
yeah, I mean, at that end of the first half stretch, Wisconsin outscored IU 13-5, I think, toward the
last 5:33
over the last, 10 or so possessions. And Wisconsin got 7 of those points just by getting to the free throw line. Some of the fouls were silly from IU. Davis made a couple, they made a couple tough shots in there, but they were just giving up easy baskets. Wisconsin had a ton of free throws in the first half. Many of the fouls were unnecessary, and you just gave easy points to them in a way that would allow them to get back in the game. And then the last 2 IU possessions, Trayce missed a point-blank layup, and Galloway had a really nice move in the post, missed a point-blank layup as well to end the half. So every opportunity that Wisconsin had during that key stretch, they took advantage of. They got to the free throw line. They were 7 of 8 during that stretch, and IU missed 2 bunnies there that put you down. But the other part is to bring this into the second half a little bit. Some of the the moments. IU scored 19 points in the first 9 possessions of the second half. Only didn't score once, and Wisconsin scored their first 5. But after that, IU had settled in a little bit defensively. and you got IU's up 7. TJD turns the ball over. I think he just dribbled it out of bounds or something. They give up a dunk on the other end, and then they call a timeout a little bit, like 12:55 left, I think, a little bit before the under 12 timeout, and they come out, and I don't know what they were. X ends up turning the ball over, but it didn't really look like there was like a set that they were running there. Just another one of those timeouts that you're like, why is this timeout being taken in this spot? But just a couple, 2 turnovers in a row, missed opportunities to extend the lead, to keep that momentum going. And the same thing, I highlighted a number of cases where that happened during that stretch. They talked about the race missed 3. Then you got, Wisconsin makes a 3 on the other end. Then we turn the ball over. TJD does get a dunk, but then you got turnover. And I think that was when that group was in, because Lander turned the ball over. Stewart turns the ball over. X comes back and misses a jumper. Bates misses a jumper. You had, 6 or 7 empty possessions there in a stretch that you had the momentum, and the lineup stuff just cuts your knees out from under you to keep that momentum going. And it's funny because there are times where Woodson seems, he talks about, well, I'm going to ride these guys till their tongues fall off or whatever, or something he said before. And then it's like, in that stretch, you were playing well. If there was a time to stick with who you had, that was the time. And then you go to those guys and they struggled, in the first half. And it is baffling to me that you see the results that group provides in the first half, and then you go back to it thinking you can steal minutes with it in the second half. And yeah, maybe you didn't lose a ton of points off the lead, but you missed an opportunity to extend the lead. And it's just little stuff like that. Just every moment when it felt like IU had a chance to really like drop the hammer on them, they just let him off the hook.
And to piggyback on that, what you want as a coach is that the game of basketball is a game of runs. So you're going to get some runs. You're going to give up some runs. But you look for moments where you can get a 2 or 3 point edge and get a little separation. So when that other team makes a run, it's not a tie ball game. It might be 4 or 5 points. Indiana had 3 different 7-point leads, which were followed by bad segments of execution. That's where a game like this is lost. When we get over the pain of losing 4-0, and you really look at it, 26-19, you mentioned that the last 5:33 of the first half, and it's 32-31. That was a chance to get a little bit of separation or keep a 4 or 5 point lead. Then you traded baskets. Like the defense were unable to stop Wisconsin, and we were efficient offensively to start the second half. And then it went to 50-43 at the timeout you mentioned, and we lost a chance to get 8, 9, 10 so we could withstand a run and get it down to 1 or 2 possession, 4 or 5 point game. That's easier to manage. So those are games within the game that we look at as coaches. Like if you can snag a possession there, not go 4 empty possessions when you have a 7-point lead, just 1 or 2 might make a difference, especially in a game down the stretch where it was a 1-possession game until you had to foul late. And then the last one was 54-47 with 10:55 to go when Race took that shot, and then that was that was followed up by TJD going out at 9:03, and then next thing you know, it's 54-53. I think at one point a 6-0 run. Someone texted us in there. So there were 3 key moments where you stretch it just a little bit, then you can withstand some of the runs. We didn't have a big enough cushion at those times to withstand Wisconsin's run, and they hung around, and then they executed better from the coaching box, and they executed better from on the court in the last 3 minutes of each half to pull out the victory. But that's the technical aspect of what happened tonight. And then you've got to look at what can the players do better, what can the coaches do better to try to avoid that going forward.
Ryan, any meaningful moments for you that we haven't discussed yet?
I mean, nobody's mentioned that review at the end. Brad Davison basically convinced the officials to look at it, and I'm not sure they can overturn that by rule. Quite frankly, I think you can judge who the ball went out after, but I don't think you can overturn whether or not it went out of bounds. Now, look, they made the right call because clearly they made the wrong call on the floor. So it's one of those things where you can't really be that upset about it. But I'm not sure they can do that and just give the ball to the other team because it never went out of bounds. Maybe I'm wrong and maybe that's new, But also, Brad Davison was working the officials more than Indiana's bench was. And that's a problem, too.
The
that was
review
going on all night.
The review, probably there's a technicality. If the ball hits the end line, it might be review of the player's foot. I mean, that's that technicality. That's really ridiculous stuff of what's reviewable and what's not reviewable.
Right.
One would hope that they would only overturn that call in a tight game on stuff that they would know what is reviewable and what's not, or someone at the scorer's bench can relay that. Because if that's the kind of mistake, that's huge.
But what they went to the monitors to review was whose hand it went off of, not the line. And they said that on the broadcast. And maybe they're wrong, but, again, it's just one of those things where – and that did change momentum. It was clear, like, Indiana's guys shrugged their shoulders, and then Wisconsin came down and scored a bunch of baskets in a row. Not – again, you've got to be able to withstand that. You've got to be able to withstand that. You've got to be able to weather adversity. And quite frankly, this team is not built to weather adversity, especially late in games. You see them weather adversity in the first half a lot. But late in games, for some reason, this team is not. And I don't know if it's maybe they're playing too much and they're tired and they don't make smart decisions.
I mean, I actually think Coach Woodson seems to have a pretty good idea about it. Let me read this quote. So this is Zach Osterman tweeted this out, really telling quote. He said, "They're kind of looking over their shoulders again in past years, how things have happened to them coming down the stretch. I've got to help them get over that somehow." And I mean, that's true. But I think that's the issue. You have a lot of guys that, coach, to use your term from earlier, have played bad basketball and have struggled down the stretch. And all the transfers that we brought in, do any of them have any NCAA tournament experience? So we have players and a coach that have never made an NCAA tournament and never won games in college, trying to lead each other to figure this out. And at times it looks like the blind leading the blind out there because these guys haven't won and haven't done it. And that's what it feels like. And Wisconsin is a team that goes to the tournament every year, wins 12, 13, 14, 15 Big Ten games every year. And that's what it looked like over the final 4 minutes today, is one team that knows how to win, another one that doesn't. And, our guys, for as hard as they play and as much as they're trying, they just can't figure it out, in these games against decent teams. And then the pressure starts to build and it starts to, to weigh on you. And whatever's happening with the new staff isn't pulling them out of it.
I get that, but it's hard I know people are right. The players got to hit shots, and there were some open shots in every game. There are open shots that are missed, but Greg Gard put everyone in the lane the last 3 or 4 minutes because IU was going to TJD, and there was no call other than still try to feed it to TJD. There was a little bit of a movement where they do the rub screen that Coach Adranya talks about all the time, and they rub that off the post, and then they stand. And the defense was set. They knew when TJD dribbled, they were going to double off the dribble, not off the catch. And then they decided who they were doubling off, and they left X and Trey Galloway open. They never left the shooter. That's good defense on Wisconsin's part. So now we're upset that X missed shots and Galloway missed shots and the shot clock drove down. But it's structural problems. At some point, you might have to do something different. Yes, you want to go to Trayce. That's a good decision to go to Trayce. But when you go to Trayce and the defense is set, then you might have to have a counter adjustment. It's a game of X's and O's, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Indiana ran the same thing, I think, or a variety of the same thing over and over and over again those last 3 minutes, and obviously it didn't work out. And that's where you have to question. Do you have a set? Do you have something else? And the good thing is he did put 2 shooters in 19 seconds. He took Galloway out and put Miller and Parker in at the end, which was good because you needed to hit a shot. So it's not like they're not trying to do the right things. It's just not working what they're doing. And then at what point do you decide to do something different to get a win? And it's players and coaches.
Yeah. Well, let's talk numbers. And Andy, and numbers, as always, here brought to us by our friends at the Power Rank, where Ed Fang uses data and analytics to make accurate football and college basketball predictions. He writes an incredible March Madness guide every year. We're going to have a special offer for you on that once March rolls around. Fortunately, that's not contingent on Indiana making it, I guess, because that's certainly looking a little bit less likely after tonight. Still, plenty of hope. There's plenty of opportunity for the Hoosiers to do it. but losing tonight certainly makes it seem less likely. But if you want sports betting advice with a PhD edge, or if you just like understanding sports at a more analytical level, definitely subscribe to Ed's free newsletter. Go to thepowerrank.com/AC to subscribe. That's thepowerrank.com/AC. Andy, lots of numbers. I think, you can look at Indiana 5 of 18 from downtown. That's obviously not a percentage that's going to get the job done. Wisconsin at the free throw line, they make 22 free throws. We shoot 18. Hard to beat teams that do that. But, the one for me that really stands out is, Indiana only gets 10 points off the bench. And, when you're going to win a big home game, against a good team, where you're kind of playing desperate, a lot of times you get big lifts from guys off your bench. A Jordan Geronimo comes in and gives you big energy. A Tamar Bates comes in, they were calling him instant offense, on the broadcast. And I think Tamar can be that guy. He's only done it once, really over the past, month or so. He doesn't give Indiana any points. Parker Stewart was able to deliver 8 points, and that was good. Christian Lander had 2 on a nice little layup, but that was it. And I think in a game like this, you needed more from your bench. You needed more of a lift from those guys. And Jordan Geronimo continues to just look lost out there. The guy that we saw, in November and December, he's really gone. He just looks frustrated, looks lost, doesn't look like the same guy. And, Tamar got some good looks, just wasn't able to make them, and didn't quite feel like he was in the same flow that he got in the Michigan State game. So those are the ones that really jump out to me. It just feels like a missed opportunity, for those guys off the bench to come in and make an impact. They just weren't able to get it done outside of Parker tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that would stand out to me a little bit. I think I go back a little bit to the free throws and the 3-point shooting. For as poor as IU shot it, 5 of 18. It's a little bit better than what Wisconsin was at 4 of 16. Outscored them from beyond the arc, but got outscored by 8 points from the free throw line. Davison and Davis were a combined 20 out of 24 from the free throw line. So those two guys alone made more than IU attempted, and really outside of Trayce, there was only 4 for IU. And just in a game where you don't shoot it well, that's a way to make up some points. And that was really, as we go back to that stretch at the end of the first half, what allowed Wisconsin to hang around in those scenarios. The shooting just rough, and offensively, I think IU ended up by the end of the game, they dipped below a point per possession again, even though the second half was a bit better than the first. But just none of those kind of hidden places that you can get points at times was really something that IU was able to do. They only get 7 second chance points. 2.10 points on the bench. They really weren't fast, got outscored on fast break points 5-3 in a game that, Wisconsin's not usually going to let you get runouts and stuff like that. But, just some of those like hidden areas where maybe you can make up some points that might make the difference in this. Just those were not areas that IU was able to establish any kind of edge over the course of the game.
Coach, any numbers?
No.
That laugh, right?
I mean, that it's really, this wasn't a game about numbers.
I feel for X, because X, I think, has really had a good season, but he really struggled tonight. 3 of 16 with 5 turnovers. That's a number you got to look at. 41% shooting. Again, there's a lot of people in the chat, and they're right. Players got to make shots, and coaches can't make shots for that. But we've heard a lot about giving players confidence and making this team's going to be a better shooting. It's just not. And I do agree that, you need to have some ability to make some shots, and maybe we just don't have that. But another number is just Miller Kopp only getting 2 field goals attempts. It's just a continuous thing that he doesn't get shot attempts. He and Stewart combined for 7. Those are, and you look, the guys running the point are getting 16 and 8. And I think that those stats just, again, show that we've got to get used to the philosophy. We need the guys that are going to be playing point guard. We need them to have good games. And that's those stats show that to me, that it's just a system. And when the system doesn't work, the point guards don't score, and your the few shots your 3-point shooters don't go in, then you're, credit the defense for keeping them in a one possession game. And that's the positive of Woody, is that they're really playing pretty solid defense. And so that's, those are the numbers.
I mean, the other
That's
thing,
my blood
Ryan,
pressure.
the only other thing to me, Ryan, that jumps out and it just underscores a point that we made earlier is the two best players on Indiana's roster in terms of plus minus were Race and Trayce. Indiana was better when they were on the court, and there was 5 minutes tonight where we had both of them off the court. I don't see any reason why in a game this important you play any minutes without one of those two guys on the court.
100%.
I do not understand.
100%. You can mix and match.
Agree.
We've demanded them to do all year. And by the way, I talked about this 2 months ago, that they were running the starters out there way too much. And you need two reasons. One, they'll wear down late in the season. And late in games, we're seeing them not play well or play smart. As Andy said, Race played 31 minutes. He was dead at the end of the game. You wear them down. And two, you play the other guys, you build your bench up. We're still late in the season where Durr got 6 minutes, Slander only got 6 minutes, Bates only got 12 minutes. Like, you're not seeing bench distribution of play at all. Geronimo got 7. As you said, guy who looked really important early in the season, he's got nothing. He offers nothing. And you lay the groundwork for that in November and December so that in January, in February, those guys can come in when maybe somebody's in foul trouble or something and provide minutes. And you feel confident in that because you've seen what they can do. Mike Woodson didn't do that. And again, it's an NBA thing. It's you leave your stars in the game as long as possible in the NBA. And that's
that's not necessarily true. Those guys played more. I mean, Wisconsin tonight, Davis played 38. Hepburn played 37. Davison played 36. And Geronimo only played 7 early in the season. He was playing more. He looked more engaged in what was going on. He just looked so out of sync right now.
No, what I'm saying is you mentioned not getting anything off your bench, though. And yeah, they didn't, Parker Stewart off the bench played 21. Well, he's basically a starter and has been all year. But what I'm saying is that you're not going to get contributions from those guys in a short amount of minutes in a game like this unless they've done it before. And frankly, they didn't do it in preseason because you were running your starters out there for 30 minutes a game. And again, that's something hopefully Mike Woodson learns moving forward, is that, hey, you've got to spend that non-conference stretch building up your guys all across the bench. That's why you tighten your rotation in when you get to Big Ten play, because you have been playing more people than you probably should just to get guys out there, get them experience. Have a game where Tamar can score 18 or something like that against Marshall or whoever. You've got to have that so those guys have it in their back pocket as they get. And it also develops guys. Guys don't develop if they don't play. You can talk about wanting the best out of practice and getting better in practice and all of that. You do not get demonstrably better unless you do it in games. And so expecting anything different out of the bench now than you got 2 months ago without them playing a whole lot more is foolish. You're not going to get huge contributions from this bench because it wasn't developed early in the season.
All right, let's keep this show rolling here. Coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hand out our Game Boss and Hoosier Hustle Award, and then I think we've got a couple of really key lingering questions that we need to discuss here before we wrap up. That's next on the assembly call. Stick with us. Okay, we have no music, but you are listening to the assembly call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 9,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. Join for free today at join.assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com. I'm Jared Morris. Andy's here. Coach is here. Ryan is here. I think the game ball is a formality. Trayce Jackson-Davis is, about as unanimous of a game ball winner as you can get. So what I think is a little bit more interesting to discuss, Coach, is, we've given a lot of criticism to the staff, and I think with good reason, for what happened in the second half. I do think, what I saw in the first half with how they used Trayce, that seems to me like a template that is going to work more nights than not, where he's on the move, he's catching the ball in different spots. It's not just straight posting up. Now, in the second half, they went to more straight posting up, and tonight, Trayce actually succeeded with it for a time. Part of that is because Wisconsin's post defense isn't great. I think they were 9th or 10th in the conference in a 2-point field goal percentage, defense coming in. So it wasn't Kofi Coburn, that he was going up against. And frankly, Trayce was just locked in tonight. But we saw it bogged down there late, and it looked a little bit more familiar. And the offense was just stagnant. But what they did in the first half, using him as a screener, using him as a roll guy, all that stuff, even letting him catch it in the high post, and then you have a cutter come from the corner. That's the kind of stuff we've been asking to see. And when they did that, the offense looked really good. So I think we all would have liked to see that more in the second half. But if there's anything, a positive nugget you can take from this is hopefully they see, how well that worked, and we start to see a little bit more of that. Wisconsin, they're great at making adjustments. This is the second straight game where the first half has been totally different than the second half because they've kind of changed the way that they're playing. But I was intrigued to see that in the first half, because that, to me, especially when Trayce brings the energy and awareness he had tonight, that seems like a role he can excel in more consistently than this role where it's just Trayce on the block and you better have the right defender and he kind of better be locked in or you're in for a long night. Because I think you get him more energetic when he's moving around and doing some of the stuff they did in the first half.
Trayce had a better job of getting angles and then creating angles after he caught and taking it to the backboard instead of just flinging a crazy hook shot. So, he had a really good game. I was really impressed with him. But I think you're exactly right. Like the first half, I was writing down set after set after set. 420 back diagonal for Kopp into the post. The second side attack from Galloway at the 5:33 mark, and that was race cut from the baseline on a post move. Galloway got one. There was a lot more movement. I would still want to see even more. But we've seen it game planned. And then as the game goes on, it's not gone back to. I think that's pretty much fact. I think we saw that in the last 5 minutes. What is the comfort in calling in late first half and late second half is going back to the middle ball screen and going back to the straight post up. At late in games, they go away from what they structured a little bit coming into the game, and I think that would be something that I would take a look at if I were on the coaching staff, to continue to do some of the stuff that we've seen in a couple games. I thought the Maryland game, you saw some action early. I didn't get a chance to see the Michigan State game. But you do see a little bit more of that. So that's progress in this dark night. But the straight post up is NBA stuff. And a lot of teams, when they post up, do have stationary players. It's not abnormal in the college game. It's just we use it an awful lot. And we don't get away from it when maybe we need to. But you watch college basketball, they throw it in the post, people stand on the opposite side. That's just spacing, and it's a big part of basketball right now. So Archie, how about that?
Oh, boy.
Woody doesn't do anything that other coaches don't do. I just think that the variety of actions, I thought about that coming into the show tonight. The variety of actions is not enough in order for us to consistently win.
Boy,
Andy?
shots fired on that one. That was
Freudian.
Yeah, I mean, I go back a little bit to what I talked about at some point earlier. They kept running that same action to where they'd get Stewart the ball on the wing and he would feed TJD after a cross screen, and then it didn't work one time because Trayce got pushed out a little bit further. I thought Coach Adrani did a good job showing some of the plays in the Michigan State game of kind of the difference of when Trayce gets pushed out a little bit further, even a step off where he wants to get the ball, that he struggles to finish. And that was, he struggled to finish on that one play. And then as soon as that happened, they went right back to, ball screen and some of the stuff they tried to run in the first half. And it was kind of the same thing. Like they got a lob to work a couple times, but then X made a turnover on one where it's just trying to, go back to the well one too many times and some of those kinds of things. And I agree. I think there was a more concerted effort in the first half to get him the ball on the move. But when push came to shove, they run the same play to get him the ball that was relatively effective for a few spots in a row. Wisconsin makes adjustments and basically packs everybody in the lane and dares somebody else to make a shot. And there's another adjustment for IU to make at that point. And they just weren't able to make it. I think that's what you look at. And that's where you look at some of the coaching, components of it and being able to to make some of those things within the game. I just thought whenever IU had something rolling, Wisconsin had a counter to it, and it took them a while to figure out how to respond to the Wisconsin counter. And at the end of the game, you didn't have time to respond to the Wisconsin counter, and just never had anything. And some of that does boil down to shooting and guys there. And I know that I saw some of the quotes from Trayce after the game that said, they were doubling him. He would make that pass to X at the top of the key 10 out of 10 times. And, to a certain extent, I'm not sure what else you would say as a teammate. I think he does, trust Xavier, and he's made important shots in other games during the season. He, was a huge reason. Some of his early contributions in that Purdue game get overshadowed by how well Rob played. Like, you can't turn your back on that guy and say, this guy's terrible. He can't play. We need to go find somebody else to do whatever, but it just felt like too late to get the right guys on the floor to be able to be in position to make some of those passes. And there were even times when they would rotate the ball out to Galloway. There was one that I think the one that he took, and it's like, if you switch places with him and Parker Stewart, and you've got Parker Stewart stepping into that shot, it's just deployment of some of these guys that it's like, that's a shot that Stewart can make, had made earlier in the game, and had done some of those things. It's just Galloway can't be the guy in that position that's going to end up receiving the ball. And they eventually made the change where you had Kopp and Stewart out there, which we know from a defensive standpoint is an issue, but at least from an offensive standpoint is there. And so I forget it was one of the threes that Trey took. I don't know if it was the one that X actually got on the putback or if it was the other one that he missed late, but there was one that it's like, man, if that is one of a couple other players getting that shot, you'd be like, that's fantastic. And again, it goes back to so much what we talked about the last couple of seasons is, you need shooters, you need guys who can make shots. And yeah, we can put some of that on the coaches. But there's also an element of you got to have guys who can make some of these open shots that they got in that those situations.
Yeah. And I'll also on that point, you need shooters to be comfortable in the offense to make shots also. I think that's part of the thing. Like Miller Kopp is a shooter. Parker Stewart is a shooter. Xavier Johnson, he's not a great shooter, but he has been good in catch and shoot opportunities. Like I actually thought that shot he got late when Trayce kicked it out to him, wasn't terrible. But one of the things that we've seen, Coach, you kind of talked about it, there's been a lot of talk about getting guys more comfortable shooting. And some guys have been, like Parker Stewart has shot well. Race Thompson's shooting has improved, some of that stuff. But what I feel like we're seeing here late in the season is what we saw a lot the last 4 years, where it's like good shooters are missing shots because they don't know when the shots are coming. They're not comfortable in the offense. They're maybe rushing when they don't need to rush, or they're, passing up shots that they should take because things are just disjointed. Offense, there needs to be a rhythm. And if you're a shooter, it's kind of nice to kind of anticipate when the shots are going to come, what spots they're going to come from. And it doesn't feel like there's any of that right now, especially with the guys on the wing, because so much is predicated just on what the point guard is doing, what the center is doing. And so I think that's some of it. It's not, and I don't think it's ever just as easy as shooters have to make shots. Yeah, well, your offense has to get shooters in rhythm to make shots also. And I think that's part of what we're seeing. So it all feeds on each other. It's not, I don't think any of the things are that simple. Ryan, let's go to the Hoosier Hustle Award. The Hoosier Hustle Award sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services, based in the hometown of IU legend Calbert Chaney. Evansville Security Services provides off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals throughout Indiana. Remember, prevention cannot be measured, so let Evansville Security Services help you prevent a bad outcome today. Go to evansvillesecurityservices.com to learn more. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com. I am giving my Hoosier Hustle Award to Miller Kopp. I thought Miller Kopp played exceptionally hard defense on Johnny Davis. He wasn't always effective on him. And I tweeted out, I think Johnny Davis started out 6 of 7 from the field, and he was making tough shots. Yeah, he was. Like for a while there, he was kind of reminding me of Jay Edwards. Actually, he's making turnaround jumpers and just kind of breathtaking shot making. And as a lot of people said, hey, Miller Kopp's playing good defense on him. He's just making him make tough shots, and that was true. But my point when I said that was what we're doing isn't sustainable. If our goal to stop Johnny Davis late in the game is, one-on-one with Miller Kopp, Parker Stewart, that's not going to work. And that proved true. That you look at this game, Trayce Jackson-Davis and Johnny Davis both score 30 points, right? But when it was winning time, Trayce wasn't getting looks and Johnny Davis was getting anything he wanted.
Yep.
Something is wrong there. So, maybe just like Wisconsin took Trayce away and made Trey take shots and made other guys take shots, maybe you sell out to stop Johnny Davis and make someone else shoot it. Make Miller Kopp the primary defender. That's fine. Because again, I thought Miller Kopp played really hard. And what impressed me about Miller Kopp is he played really hard on defense without getting any reward on offense. And yet, and Johnny Davis hit some shots on him, that probably make, whatever the defensive numbers would be for Miller Kopp, not what they wanted, not what you would want, because those were tough shots. So I want to give Miller Kopp credit because I thought he played really hard defensively, but I'm also just dismayed that we didn't have more answers for one of the Big Ten's best scorers than our worst defender.
The guy you should be running your whole game plan to like do something with or make it tough.
Yeah. Like kudos to Miller Kopp for making the best of it, but you kind of hung those guys out to dry a little bit. It's not what they do. They're not getting shots on the other end to compensate for it. There were some issues defensively tonight that to me were almost as egregious as what we did offensively.
Of course.
So anyway, Miller Kopp for Hoosier Hustle. Who do you have for Hoosier Hustle?
The camera guy for ESPN who kept getting Tyra Buss. I mean, that guy worked overtime. Seriously, buddy, you earned your paycheck tonight for finding Tyra Buss in the stands constantly. I was watching with the sound off, and it was just insufferable.
ESPN loves to make the game like the afterthought.
And what's funny is they had like Billis doing, like Billis is maybe the best analyst in all of sports, in all of college sports, doing the game, and they just were making it about everything else. So I don't know.
Billis did at times seem to be taken aback by the physicality of a Big Ten game, which made me question how many Big Ten games he watches with regularity, because
he covers a lot of ACC. And
understood. But I was just like, yeah, he seemed like he had been dropped onto a different planet. And I'm thinking, this is every friggin' game, buddy. Just welcome to the league.
I love Billis for calling out the officials constantly too. That wasn't a foul. Like every time, I love it. And he by the way loves Assembly Hall. It's one of his favorite venues to do games. He's told me. So kudos. There's a thumbs up for Jay Billis on the night. My Hoosier Hustle. I agree with everything you said about Kopp, Jared. I thought he played really hard, and I think that's a guy who, through his actions, is clearly a leader on this team. And I don't think he gets rewarded for his leadership. I mean, last game he only played 12 minutes. When the guy who got suspended played 27 or something like that. The similar guy on the roster who got suspended played 27. But I'm going to go with Trayce Thompson. I thought he had another game where he just, his effort just it's everything to this team. And he was the only player with a positive plus minus with +5 on the night. And he played 31 minutes. And I just thought that, he was doing everything. He took that boneheaded 3-pointer. Other than that, I have no complaints about anything Trayce Thompson did tonight.
Andy?
I was going to go with Trayce, so I'll stick with that. I think your argument for Kopp is good, and I did talk about him earlier. I thought he did as well as he could possibly be expected to do against Davis. But yeah, I thought Trayce, again, you set that one aside. He did hit a big 3 early in the second half that really gave IU a little bit of a jolt there and made some hustle plays as he is wont to do. So I'll give it to Trayce. 13-8, I believe, is what he ended up with. So,
Coach,
I just am continuously impressed with how hard Trey Galloway plays. I know we want him to shoot better. He was 1 of 3 from 3, 33%. That's probably what we're going to get. But he does a lot of things. His cuts on offense, the one dribble handoff he blew up when Davidson was going to go there, and he just kind of beat Davidson there and beat him up a little bit. There was a key rebound he got right before that early in the second half where he tipped it and went and pursued it. I think those are Indiana basketball plays, and I think that's part of what everyone in the chat and everyone we're missing right now is Indiana shooters and a collective group of Indiana kids who will just knock you down and win games by doing the little things at key moments, and we're missing that. So I don't have any problem with Trayce Thompson. He's obviously going to get it, but I just think that Galloway maximizes his ability. You can't win with 5 Trey Galloways, I don't think, but you sure like the one that you have on your squad.
Yep. And as we've talked about, his shooting is the biggest swing skill in the program, I think, for the next 2 years, because Trey Galloway is going to play a lot of minutes. And I think this program is, to a certain extent, going to take on his personality, and it has a little bit. I mean, this is a team that fights and they don't back down from physical play, and they're tough. They got to learn to keep their composure a little bit better when some of that stuff happens. But you can just kind of see a little bit of an attitude, when Trey Galloway is out there. And if he can be a more consistent scorer and shooter, it's going to be really important for this program, because you're going to want him to play as much as possible, and he's going to need to be a guy who's out there at the end of games that can make that shot that he took tonight. And maybe in 2 years, he is able to make that shot. Unfortunately, tonight he wasn't. Is it worth talking bracketology? I don't even know if anybody wants to hear. Maybe they do. Where is Indiana? Give us the reality check. We've lost 4 in a row. I'm guessing it's not as bad as most of us fear, but it's getting extremely tenuous, would be how I would guess that it is. You guys are the experts.
We're just staring each other down, deciding who's going to talk first. I'll go ahead and go. Yeah, it's not great. I had them as a 10 on mine that came out this morning. I think they'd probably be in that 11. I think they're very firmly in the potential last 4 in type category right now.
Which has produced 2 Final Four teams, VCU and UCLA. So it's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this team.
We all need more Jared in us.
This team. Yeah.
Life would be
when
better.
Things are at their, when
absolute worst, and you still find something positive.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. But I think the challenge is that, they continue to, at a certain point, the no bad losses only gets you so far. And I think we can argue that some of the losses are bad, even though they don't fall in quad 3 or quad 4. The non-conference strength of schedule is an albatross, if you will, that is going to weigh this team down. And they did win those couple road games, but if they don't find, quite honestly, if they don't win the road games, they're not going to win many, and just don't win many games, period. It's not going to matter whether they win on the road or away, or at home. But, only having 2 road wins, you really have 2. Well, I guess you got 3 wins against the field if you count in Notre Dame. There are a number of teams who are around them on most people's seed list and around the cut line that are actually winning games. And I know that the last, X number of games don't matter any more than the others do. But the losses are starting to mount, and the fact that half of this team's wins fall in quad 4 becomes more impactful the more games that you lose. It's easy to look over some of those things when you're, when you only got 5 losses, but that's no longer the case.
The truth of the matter, Rutgers' resume is better than Indiana's. If you really want to be honest, I haven't necessarily looked at it, but Rutgers has to play Illinois and some other teams too that are good and can lose 2 or 3. But Rutgers has 6 quad 1 wins. Indiana has 2. And Rutgers has beaten almost everyone in the top half of the Big Ten. Now they have some bad losses. Indiana is going to probably be in our last 4 in or first 4 out coming Friday, with 2 opportunities. You got at Purdue and at Ohio State to get quad 1 wins, but at 2 and 6 right now, 2 and 5. They're 2 and 6 in quad 1, and 2 and 3 is not good either. So you're 4 and 9, which means out of 13 games against your best competition, you've won 4. And one of those is not in the tournament. That combined with the strength of schedule in the 300s is usually a ticket out. So you got to get at least one more quad 1 win. Beating Rutgers at home is going to be difficult anyway, but Rutgers, Maryland, and Minnesota on the road probably is still not going to maybe cut it if you don't get Ohio State or Purdue on the road.
Well, that is what is coming up for Indiana, a game on Monday against Ohio State. I guess, I don't know if it's good or bad. They've got this long stretch. I suppose it's probably good because this team needs to go back to the drawing board, after 4 losses, and they got to refine themselves. and hopefully there's, I don't know, you see losing streaks like this and teams struggling at the end, suspensions mixed in the middle. You start to worry about something just being irreparably broken internally. Certainly hope not, and this team has a week now to work on things, and they've got opportunities. There's still 5 regular season games in the Big Ten tournament. So it feels pretty hopeless right now. And I think in a lot of ways it is. Well, it's not hopeless, but it is. Things are not good, as we all know, but there are still opportunities there, and this team is capable of taking advantage of them theoretically. So this is obviously a big week for them to go back to the drawing board, come together, and get some work done. We will have Assembly Call Radio on Thursday. We'll obviously talk more kind of macro, big picture stuff on Thursday, and then Monday night for the Ohio State show, Mark Titus will be with us. So at least if it's another devastating loss, we'll have Titus there to provide some comic relief. Indiana won the race to 69 tonight and then just stopped scoring. Titus and Tate lied to us. They're supposed to win the game if that happens. I blame them.
We'll bring that up on Monday.
Yeah, we'll bring it up on Monday. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember to check out our friends at Homefield Apparel. Use the promo code HOME at checkout to get 15% off your first order. All right, guys, time for last call. Let's go in order of time zone. Andy, you go first.
I don't. What else is there really to say? I think Jen put a quote in the chat. Johnny Davis on Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's a great player. He's tough to stop down there with the ball in the low post, but he doesn't really have too much help around him. Truth.
Yikes.
Yeah. Well, hard to argue in some regard after tonight, but oh boy. This was a huge missed opportunity for IU. For as we talked about the stretches where they had chances to extend the lead. They also played poorly in some stretches, and they'd still gotten themselves in a home game up 4 down the stretch and just couldn't close things out. And that's a all too familiar refrain at this point for this program and for this team. And it's what gives you pause when you start to think about what remains on the schedule and if this team and this group of players and this coaching staff is going to be able to right the ship. And while I think we'd all love to be proven wrong, there's very little evidence that that's going to happen. And so we'll be here and we'll talk about it and we'll root for it and all those things. But this just feels like they tried to get up off the mat for this one, and I just don't know if they can get up again based on recent history. So hopefully that proves to not be the case. But this game was right there for the taking, and the late game execution and decision making from both the players and the coaches really took that chance away in some regard in terms of being able to get this win. And I think we'll never know what the season would end up being like had they been able to find a way to win this game, even if it was in wildly unimpressive fashion, just to be able to get this win and what that might have done heading into some of these stretch games. And now, we worry about the opposite in terms of how they react to another tough loss. But it just definitely feels, when you put this in the context of recent seasons, boy, it's tough to feel optimistic, despite your attempts to convince me that IU could be the next VCU or UCLA a few minutes ago.
I was just stating a fact. I wasn't saying that would be IU.
Not the time, Jared. Not the time.
Just saying. Let's just make it there. Let's just get there somehow, some way. Coach, last call.
Yeah, I think it's been said that we have a bunch of one-dimensional basketball players. And you can win with one-dimensional basketball players, but then you have to have the scheme that matches and puts the one-dimensional players in position to succeed. And I think we have a scheme that needs very talented people. And so recruiting is going to be very important going forward to match Coach Woodson's philosophy of offense. Obviously, the guys we have bought in defensively. and it's just been a pleasure to watch the defensive effort. The defensive effort all year has been there, except for the Michigan game, I think, and maybe spots here or there to win games. That's the frustrating part, is the defense has improved back to where Indiana needs to play defense and is really keeping Indiana in games, and the offense has just gone off the rails with a coaching staff that could recruit with the transfer portal guys that they wanted to have in here. That's the frustrating part, is when you see offensive efficiency in the 115, and the offensive efficiency last year was 72, and we're 40 spots worse offensively. That's the disappointing part. And when people say, oh, players need to make shots and that, yes, the talent is somewhat the issue, the roster is somewhat the issue, but we also have to say that there's some schematic issues with this team right now, and maybe some other internal issues to not maximize these one-dimensional players who are giving a lot to Indiana University. And to me, that's disappointing. More so than the loss is how we're losing, not the fact that we're losing to good programs.
Well said, Brian. Last call.
Yeah, I'm tired of watching the same movie over and over again. I feel like when IU loses, it loses late. And these guys are not mentally and physically tough enough to finish games. That's not just on the talent. That's on the way they're prepared. It's on what the coaches are sending in. If you know your team is struggling at those things, maybe do something different at the end of games. Maybe switch it up. Maybe run a set. Have sets in your back pocket that can get you an easy bucket off a cut or off a screen. Or, normally when you're down screening, switch it to an up screen so you get a backdoor cut, something. I mean, you've got to have something in your back pocket that when this team struggles late, you can get a bucket. You can rely on this. You can pull it out. Sort of like how teams run their best short yardage play when they need a 2-point conversion. That kind of thing you've got to have in your back pocket if you're Mike Woodson. And Mike Woodson, we were sold on his ability to break things down and, call great plays and all this stuff. And he's really smart offensively and all this. We were told all of this stuff about because his resume in the NBA, numbers wise, he had some good years, but it wasn't like he was this phenomenal coach who had this long stretch of success in the NBA. But we were told, no, he's actually a really smart offensive guy. He puts guys in really good positions defensively. He's actually going to be really good. We were sold on that, and we have not seen it. Defensively, the team is much better. There's no argument there. The team is much better. The team plays with more effort than it did under Archie Miller. There are improvements, no question, but it ain't enough. There is no reason that this roster with these players, with veterans, with talented players, with guys who are, quite frankly, talented but haven't been deployed properly most of the season, there is no reason that this roster should not solidly be in the NCAA tournament. And right now, as the bracketologists have just told you, it doesn't look good. And they got to win some games they are not expected to win just to make it in the NCAA tournament. As we have discussed all year, Indiana not making the NCAA tournament this year is a disaster for the program. Can it bounce back? Absolutely. But Mike Woodson needed to come in year one and make a statement that he's better than what has been here before, that he is the guy to correct this. And the way you do that is be better than the guys before you. Take the players that Archie Miller had, some of them, add a little bit, and make the NCAA tournament like he never did. Play better than Tom Crean's last teams did. Play smarter, have more passion, have more intensity, have more focus. This team hasn't done that. And that is how do you sell recruits on 6 straight years without an NCAA tournament berth? If you come in with all this fanfare about being the IU guy who's going to get it back where it needs to be, and you step on campus in your first year, you have an All-American candidate and you have talent around him, and you can't make the NCAA tournament. That is a scary thought, and it needs to wake this team up. It needs to wake Mike Woodson up. Change what you're doing, because this is a 5-alarm fire now. You cannot miss the tournament this year. The consequences of that would be disastrous. So this team needs to go on a run, and it needs to do it now.
Yeah. I think we all knew when Mike Woodson got hired, because we talked about it, that there was going to be a transition. This is an NBA coach coming to college. There were going to be things he needed to learn. Thad Matta was brought in to hopefully help that, an experienced college staff to help that. And as this season is playing out, a lot of those things that we thought could happen are happening, are showing themselves. And so, we're going to see if he's able to make those adjustments in season, or if this is, something that's going to be a narrative all throughout the offseason. We're kind of hoping to see, okay, with some of his own, another year to help build his roster and a year to adjust, if he's able to adjust more to the college game. But those are all discussions for another day. Right now, this Indiana team, they've still got their goals there that they can make the NCAA tournament. The degree of difficulty just went up a lot. And I think on a night like tonight, I'm disappointed for the guys, honestly. I thought they played really hard tonight. I thought they came out with winning effort and winning energy, winning focus. And I just didn't think they were put in positions to succeed. And that's hard to watch, because I think, obviously there's been some adversity, guys getting suspended and, bad losses to Illinois and Michigan State where you're just not even there down the stretch. And led by, Trayce Jackson-Davis. I thought they laid it out there tonight. And they just weren't able to do it. And that's disappointing. And so I hope in this off week that they're able to figure out some answers and play better against Ohio State and have a chance in that game down the stretch. And we'll see what happens. And by the way, Johnny Davis, with that comment, that is slander against Race Thompson. So I kind of hope that we get to play these guys again, because I'm guessing Race Thompson will make note of that comment and have a little something for Johnny Davis the next time we play them. I mean, hopefully Indiana would have something for him because they had nothing for him tonight. But we can't let slander against Race Thompson stand, not on this show. Well, all right, guys, it is time to wrap up. We'll have plenty more to discuss on Assembly Call Radio. But that is it for tonight. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson for the music that you hear on the show, and special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Thursday night for Assembly Call Radio. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers. The guys played hard. Will, get out of here with this stuff. They didn't lose tonight because of lack of effort. They lost because of execution.
And a lack of direction.
This is the thing against Wisconsin. It's not usually a battle of wills against Wisconsin. It's a battle of execution, and they out-execute most teams. Sometimes you can out-talent them, but, you got to execute. We didn't execute defensively or offensively.
Well, our friend Eric popped into the chat and said that Thad Matta has about as much impact on the team as I do. I take offense to that. I think I have a much bigger impact on the team than Thad Matta, if you have any idea what's going on behind the scenes. Because there might be a player who listens to the show, whereas nobody's listening to Thad Matta.
And why would you? I mean,
yeah, why would you use that guy as a resource? I don't know. I mean, what's he ever done?
Look, a
waste that is.
Well, I mean, part of there, we talked a lot about Woodson when he was hired, and I think part of what made it palatable for folks and had people excited about it was this pairing with Matta and how that would work, and that would help smooth over some of the potential transition issues. And it doesn't sound like that's happened, and we're seeing a lot of the issues that we kind of feared we would see. So it's not like some of the issues we're seeing weren't predictable or even predicted. I just think it's hard to see them in the moment, and it starts to make you really worry about how long they'll persist. I don't know. Concerning though.
Yeah.
The longer it goes on. I know it's year one. You don't want to overreact and jump ship, and no one's saying any of those things, but these are concerning things that, as they continue to happen. Like at some point you kind of want to see it. And there were some changes tonight. It's not like it's all, the same stuff. But boy, down the stretch, it sure feels like it is.
Yeah, same story we've seen in the last 5 years. I mean, it really is just wilting late. And you could say, these are players who are not used to winning and things like that. That's fair, but players only start winning when somebody shows them how to win. I mean, there's a symbiotic relationship there, and it's
that's the thing. Woody doesn't know how to win college basketball games.
Exactly.
Right
No, you're right, but I remember the day he got hired. I came on here and people were excited because everybody likes Mike Woodson. Like, he's a likable guy. He's a good dude. We all like him. And I was kind of
the template for Scott Dolson painted makes some sense.
Yes, it does. But I also, I pumped the brakes and everybody got really, not you guys, not the people on the air, but the fans got really mad because everybody wants to be super excited about a new hire. No matter who gets hired, it's funny. Fans 95% of the time, it could be the worst hire in the world. They'll convince themselves this is the one that brings us back. And I said, there's some things, and I mentioned the MBA to college. He'd never coached in college at any level. If he'd been an assistant for a long time and then gone to the NBA and done that, you could say, like, well, he's got some experience. He knows the difference between the two and things like that. But he had no experience. And that was a huge red flag to me, and then again, you're right. They bring in Thad Matta and you think, okay, if these guys are sitting, working together, and Thad Matta is basically putting him on a treadmill and training him for the college game. Okay, I get it. I get where this can go. Still cautious because that's hard to learn. I
think even the most pro Mike Woodson people were cautious. Like, that's, there was.
But people were doing that. People were pulling the emotional thing. And this was what was going to happen whenever Indiana finally brought back an IU guy. People were pulling that he gets Indiana. He gets what it takes to win at Indiana. By the way, that doesn't effing matter. What worked at Indiana under Bob Knight does not work now. It's a different world. It's a different game. Did Bob Knight have NIL? It's completely different what it takes to win in basketball then versus now. Now it's all about the three-point shot. Back then it was all about running through the paint with guards and your big men.
But I don't even think that was the
offense.
point. But I don't even think that was the point. I don't think people were saying he knows how to win schematically at Indiana. It was that he was going to help rebuild the culture and bring the family back together.
My point was the game's different, both on the court and off the court. And so when people said, like, he knows Indiana, it's like, so what? Like, he knows what Indiana was. I mean, maybe he's still around and sees it, but, like, what Indiana has changed, and it will change. And like, that doesn't mean that you don't discipline players. That doesn't mean that you don't graduate players and things like that. But this whole thing about, like, he knows what it takes to win at Indiana, it's like, I
just don't think that means what you're suggesting it means.
It means, okay. But my point is that, like, he may know what it takes to win at Indiana back then, but, like, again, the culture and all of that stuff has changed. The world has changed. So what from years ago doesn't apply anymore. It just doesn't. And maybe trying to recapture that past glory is part of the problem at Indiana. I mean, the world's changed, man. I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know. I just feel like that because for years I heard about this the whole time I was in college, because I was at college during the Mike Davis era. And all people said during the Mike Davis era, got to have an IU guy. Got to have an IU guy. We got to get rid of Davis, have an IU guy. And I just was like, okay, convince me why. And nobody could ever come up with a great explanation except for he knows what it takes to win it. Steve Alford knows what it takes to win at Indiana. It's like, how? He's never been the head coach at Indiana. He's never run a program at Indiana. He played here. Like, he had somebody else telling him what it takes to win at Indiana. Like, I don't know. I've just never gotten that vibe. And I feel like, and you know where else I've gotten that? I've heard that is USC. Everybody's like, we need to get a USC guy. USC's unique. First of all, everybody thinks their program is unique. Every major program Michigan thinks their program is unique in football. Alabama, of course, unique. It's different. It takes a certain kind of guy to win here. They're all think they're different. And so this idea that only somebody with that tradition really could unlock it is crazy.
No, the point that was the only way to unlock it has always been silly. Stupid. I mean, to me, there were reasons beyond just Mike Woodson's connection to Indiana to think this is an interesting experiment, given what you had seen Juwan Howard, kind of do at Michigan which was, more kind of carrying on what John Beeline had built, but still. Anyway, we're relitigating old things. I mean, all that matters right now is Mike Woodson's going to have to adjust in ways that we thought he was going to have to adjust. It's just really hard to experience it in the moment with a team capable of making the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So anyway, fun stuff.
I've got people in my mentions on Twitter saying that Alford's the only guy who could take us to the Final Four, by the way.
Well, that's true.
Oh.
That is true.
Yeah, definitely.
Man. Well, gentlemen, I think Coach might have fallen asleep in the recliner down there.
I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. Can you imagine that? Indiana basketball has made Coach Tonsoni speechless.
I mean, it gets harder. This is the 5th straight February that the rug has kind of been pulled out from us. Different reasons each time, but I get, man, it was really hard for me when we first started doing the show, even the first few struggles that Crean had. I didn't get, why people would get so upset. And to a certain extent, I think they were wrong. Now, man, it's harder and harder to credibly tell people that they should, have hope and, all this stuff. Cause it's you keep getting smacked in the face at some point,
Thanks, PB Bulldog. Thanks, but no thanks. You don't want me coaching the Hoosiers.
That'd be entertaining. We'd get good inside information.
We would move on offense, though. Damn well guarantee it. I'd share the 17 sets that I know.
Are we all just hanging out here because we're afraid to go to bed and close our eyes and see visions of those last few possessions?
I've still got to be up for another 2 hours, guys. I don't want to face the world at this point.
I'm just waiting to see if Steve Alford can close out this game against San Jose State to move to 5-8 in the Mountain West. So that's all I'm here for.
Is all of our games for Bracketology done tonight, Andy?
Yeah, that's the only one that's still going.
All the important ones.
Yeah, that's literally the only one that's still going.
Should we just do a marathon show until Indiana wins another basketball game? Should we stay on air until Indiana wins again?
I didn't need to hear. I didn't need to hear the end of what you were saying. No.
Like the old filibuster, you got to stay on air until the win.
We will broadcast. We're going to keep a broadcast going until Indiana wins.
Titus logs in on Thursday, and we're just all laying.
Yeah, no one's shaved.
Looks like a crime scene.
I'll read from my blue ribbon yearbook.
Wives have filed divorce papers.
The Conference
Not
USA
married,
report.
so I'm good.
Yeah, you can anchor things.
Yeah. Been kicked out of the shack I'm living in my friend's backyard.
Oh, Michael says it might be till next November. See, and this is the thing. I want to argue with Michael and say you're ridiculous. And yet we have last year where we completely collapsed and didn't win another game. We have a couple years ago where we lost 12 out of 13. Michael's statement is somewhat rational given the recent experience of IU basketball fans. That is sad.
We're not going to win one in the Big Ten tournament, so that's out.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make this a positive. I'm going to go to sleep.
We're
going to lose 4 games, right? And we're going to be out. Everyone's going to be bummed. We're going to do a show in front of 11 people. The last game of the season, and then we're going to go on a run and win the Big Ten tournament, and get the
we're not,
and be seeded 13th.
No, we're not.
I'm trying to be positive.
Well, you're also being ridiculous. It's
okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, those two things are very synonymous in this age of Indiana basketball. Being positive does put you out on a limb of being ridiculous, unfortunately.
Hey, at least the U.S. curling team can play tomorrow night and get a spot in the finals, in the Final Four.
Hey, Lisa's going to hang out with us. We got people ready to go here for the marathon broadcast.
Why did you have to offer that, Jared? Jared,
I made this solo riff. Leave it on.
Guys, everybody mute your machines. We're going to talk to Jared real quick. Listen, you son of a...
Hey, good news. Right. We got our leading scorer back from a high ankle sprain. He only missed a couple of games. Okay. So we lost a couple over the weekend. Probably bad coaching, no adjustments, not moving players, turning the ball over. It's all our fault. probably. But no, we lost our 20-point score, but he's back. Conference championship game Friday night, weather permitting. We're supposed to get hit with some more snow. Hopefully.
Do you guys see the video from Pasadena today? It looked like there was snow on the ground because it hailed so hard and so long that it looked like it snowed all over Pasadena in Southern California. Ridiculous. I could use some of that hail over here, by the way.
John Gassaway just tweeted, Indiana the last 4 seasons, November through January, 52 and 27. February and March, 15 and 25.
Ooh, John, right below the belt.
Wow. Thanks, John.
Is that bad, though? Seems bad.
It's very bad.
Very
so
bad.
Very bad.
Gracious.
Okay. All right. Well,
a great note.
We can round up on Thursday to talk IU basketball.
Oh yeah, can't wait.
Well,
I will not be there. We have a game rescheduled
Coach
game
won't be
Thursday
here.
night.
I'm actually actively working to get a game rescheduled for that right now.
yeah, Andy's supposed to host.
You're on the
Thursday.
phone
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah,
I have games.
I don't even care
Thursday,
who it
next
is.
Monday.
It doesn't matter to me.
There's been a whole new thing in the Big Ten tournament where I'm coaching. I'm done. I'm out.
Who's on Monday? Thursday? Who's on Thursday?
Well, you and Andy were supposed to be on Thursday.
Right,
I'm not going to be here.
No, I know I'm on, but I wasn't sure if it was 3 of us.
Maybe it'll just be a Ryan solo show. Just do a Ryan AMA.
You did fine without music.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. We didn't deserve.
What's
it
up with your music, man?
I
don't know what happened.
Like you're perfect. When have you ever made a mistake?
Seriously,
I mean,
Coach.
I guess
let's,
it must.
let's take a pause there, Coach. When has he ever made a mistake?
Well, I don't know because I did some software updates earlier today, so I think I made the mistake of not rebooting my computer. I'm guessing that's the problem, but because of this, I don't know. It's the same setup and it just didn't work, so I got to figure out what the deal is.
Yeah, I could host it solo, and then you could add the music later, just over when I'm talking. It's say something you don't like, just kick in a Bob Thompson.
Okay, let's go.
Let's
end this.
Bye, everybody.
Mercifully. Thanks for being here, everybody. Ooh, P Bulldog. Should we just change this to a Gonzaga podcast?
Too many late games. I don't know if I could do that.
Coach Tonsoni is always right about basketball.
Okay, well, that's fair.
Okay, it's
Just
time.
wanted to make sure I got that in before everyone signed off.
All right.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
No one wants to leave. Who's the first to go? It's a gun. Ryan.
Ryan. I really thought I was going to beat him to it, but
no.
all right.
All right. See you guys. Ugh.